The cheerful teacher I fell for wasn't cheerful at all.
Trigger warning. The following story contains mention of depression.
He was like a bright, shining light hidden in a glass room, beautiful to look at, but you can never do anything but admire. The break room was full of chatter as all my coworkers had lunch, but my attention was fixed on only one person. He sat not too close, but not too far away, like he always did. He was full of energy when anyone talked to him, but when he wasn't being addressed, he stayed quiet and ate his food. Very much part of the group, very much the center of attention, but always just a little far off from everyone else. That was the best way I could describe Adam Larson, or Mr. Larson, as the students knew him as. As if sensing my eyes on him, Adam looked up from his food. Our gazes met. He gave me a warm smile, the corners of his eyes crinkling up cutely. It was like a straight punch to my gut. I smiled, gave him a nervous smile back, and quickly looked away. I had been crushing on Adam for months at that point. He was a cool, popular art teacher. The kids always had relaxed expressions when they went to his class. While I didn't consider myself a bad teacher, the fact that I taught math automatically put me in a bad spot before I even opened my mouth to teach. But it wasn't just the students. The teachers, my colleagues, all wanted to be his friend. I vividly remembered the air of faint disappointment among the young female teachers when they found out about Adam being gay. I also vividly remember how happy I was, inwardly. Adam was gay, but I didn't know how to approach him. Or it was better to say he was thoroughly unapproachable. Polite, friendly, attractive, and bubbly, but it always felt like he kept a careful distance from all the people around him. I grew tired of simply watching like an idiot from afar. I wasn't some love-struck hormonal teenager. I was a grown man. I absolutely knew how to flirt when I needed to. Yeah, that afternoon, after the day was over, I stepped outside just in time to spot Adam hobbling over to his car with a pile of folders stacked precariously in his arms. It was a windy day. It was seriously like a strong gust of wind would send him toppling right over. I rushed over. "Whoa, hey, you're gonna fall over at that rate." Adam stretched his neck past the pile to peer at me. He gave me a slightly strained smile. "Hey, Roman, just trying not to ruin these projects. The kids worked really hard on them. Way heavier than I expected," he chuckled. "I can see that. You need some help?" I offered. With a bit of awkward maneuvering, I managed to take half of the art projects from him. He wasn't kidding. They were heavy. Together we walked to his car. I glanced at him through the corner of my eye. His profile was as beautiful as ever. Eyes bright, face set in an easy, relaxed smile. It widened as he looked over at me. "Really, this is a massive help. I should have known better than to try and get everything in one trip." All I could do was smile and blush, really, and hope I didn't look like an idiot. We reached his car safely. After he managed to fish his keys out of his pocket, he unlocked the car doors and we carefully piled the folders into his back seat. He shut the door and leaned back against it with a sigh. "Phew, thanks again." He tucked his hands in the pockets of his pants. "I really owe you one." I was about to tell him not to mention it when I was struck by an idea. Summoning my boldness, I tried to mirror his easy smile. "In that case, do you mind giving me a ride to the bus stop? I usually just walk." Adam grinned, pushing himself off the car. He opened the door to the passenger seat and with an exaggerated flourish, gestured inside. "As you wish. I pass it all the time anyway." I slipped into the car. It was clean and a sweet crisp smell came from the air freshener hanging from the mirror. The one oddity I noticed right before Adam slipped into the driver's seat was the small markings on the leather of the driver's seat, like someone had been scratching on them. I didn't think about them for very long, though, because soon he grabbed the wheel and all I could think of was how nice his fingers were. The drive to the bus stop was short but sweet. We made casual small talk, but inwardly I was too focused on how to go about asking my next question. Unfortunately, I thought for too long because we stopped at the bus stop only a few minutes later. "I don't mind dropping you off at home," he offered, watching as I gathered up my things. Don't worry about it. Really, this has been a great help already. Don't want you wasting gas or anything." I grabbed my bag and unbuckled the seatbelt, about to get out of the car. "With that, I assume my debt to you is paid?" he joked, leaning back in his seat. I smiled back, feeling a rush of nervous adrenaline. It had been so long since merely talking to someone had made me so nervous and excited at the same time. "Well, there is one more thing," I tried to sound as cool and relaxed as he did. "You know, there's that movie premiering on Saturday." "I'm aware," he hummed. "What about it?" "Well, as luck would have it, I have 2 tickets." "Really? You just happen to have 2 tickets?" I won them in a bet." Adam flashed me an impish grin. "Sure, let's go with that." I flushed. Seems like he'd seen right through me. But that meant he knew what I was going to ask, and he was smiling, so I went for it. "I could go by myself, but that'd be a waste, you know? Well, unless I sold the ticket." "Forget I said that. What I'm asking is, would you like to go to that premiere with me?" A beat. Adam cocked his head slightly as he thought. I spotted his finger moving against the steering wheel, his neat white nail lightly scraping against the leather. For the first time, I noticed how long he kept his nails. "This Saturday?" he asked, drawing my attention back to his face. When I nodded, he seemed to hesitate for a moment. I was about to tell him it was fine if he didn't want to, but before I could, he was smiling again. "Sounds like fun. Let's do it." Saturday. Adam and I met up on Saturday evening, and I was beyond excited. It had been ages since I had been out with someone like this, and for that person to be Adam of all people, the nervous excitement in my chest was such an addictive feeling. When we met up near the theater, I couldn't help but stare. I'd never seen him outside of work before. When he wasn't in Mr. Larson's mode, he somehow managed to look even more handsome. He smiled when we reached each other. "Roman, you look great." "So do you." I held my hands behind my back. "Great" was an adjustment, but I refrained from telling Adam how hot I thought he looked. "Want to head in?" "Yep, we need to get good seats and popcorn. That's the best part." Together we headed inside. The movie was a sort of comedy adventure, the kind to make you laugh out loud, and at several points Adam and I did. As the movie started to reach its end, though, I noticed Adam had fallen oddly silent. When I glanced at him, he was staring at the screen with a blank, almost tired expression I had never seen on his face before. It surprised me so much that I found myself flat out staring at him. He noticed and looked my way, his lips immediately curled. "I've got to use the bathroom," he said, shifting the popcorn on his lap onto mine. "Hold on to this for me, all right? I'll be right back." Before I had the chance to even meaningfully react to his request, he was squeezing himself out of the dark aisle. I watched his silhouette disappear through the door. Well, if he needed to use the bathroom, it couldn't be helped. I tried to put my worries out of my mind and focus on the film. When he returned about 15 minutes later, he was back to how he had been earlier. Seeing him like this, all my worries melted away, and I returned to focusing on the movie. After the movie, we headed outside. It was dark at that point. "This was fun," he said, as we walked side by side. "Yeah," I smiled to myself. My insides went all warm and fuzzy just from hearing him say he'd enjoy himself. "We should hang out like this more often if you want." I glanced at him. He was staring straight ahead, a slightly thoughtful look on his face. He was quiet for a bit. "Yeah, we should. I'd like that a lot," he finally said. I was still grinning to myself as we parted ways. Just from observing Adam, it felt like he did his best to keep himself at a careful distance from other people, like he was in some kind of invisible bubble. And now, for whatever reason, he was letting me in. The next Monday. When we next saw each other, it was early on Monday morning. I knew he taught a class first period on Mondays, so he had to get there really early to prepare the art room for the students. I had some preparation to do of my own, but I decided to stop by to pay him a visit. The halls were mostly quiet as I made my way to the art room. In a little over 2 hours, they would be bustling and full of students. When I got to the art room, Adam was, unsurprisingly, already there. He was setting up easels and chairs. When he heard someone enter the room, he paused and looked over. Upon seeing me, he smiled. "Oh, good morning, Roman," he tilted his head. "You don't usually come around here. To what do I owe the pleasure?" I gingerly made my way inside. "I just thought I'd come to say hi. I don't have a whole lot to do right now, so..." "I wish that were me," he chuckled. "My coffee has not kicked in yet. Want some help?" "Please." With that, I got to help Adam set his class up. I knew I couldn't spend a lot of time here. I had my own prep to do, but it was so worth it to be able to spend a little time with him. He yawned a few times. Watching him closely, I could tell that he looked more tired than usual. His movements were a bit sluggish, and the slightly darkened patches under his eyes were obvious upon taking a good look at him. I frowned. "Are you all right? It looks like you didn't get a lot of sleep last night." Adam smiled wryly. "Like I said, my coffee hasn't kicked in. I'm really not a morning person is all." "Oh," I couldn't help but sound a little doubtful. It looked to me like he hadn't gotten any sleep at all. "Don't worry about that. Anyway," he smoothly changed the subject, "you showed me a good time last weekend, so now it's my turn to take you out." I blinked. "Take me where exactly?" Adam shrugged. "I haven't figured that part out yet. I just want to see you outside of school more." I blushed and looked away. "You're too smooth for your own good, you know that?" "It makes you smile, so I think it does me plenty of good, actually," Adam said, matter-of-factly. I laughed out loud at that. Seriously, way too smooth. I hung around for another 15 minutes before a quick look at my watch made me sigh. "I've got to get going," I said regretfully. "See you later?" Adam nodded. "Definitely. I'll let you know when I decide where I want to take you." He sent me a wink as he sat down, rolling his sleeves up to his elbows. Then he got to work mixing paints together. As I moved to leave, my gaze lingered on his firm, strong forearms. I noticed something odd, then a small scattering of tiny scars on his skin, faint and crescent-shaped. I probably wouldn't have noticed them if I hadn't looked. As I left the art room, I wondered if he had a cat or something. I hoped not. I was extremely allergic to them. The weeks pass. The next couple of weeks were pleasant. Adam and I started to spend more time with each other, both inside and outside of school. I actually had to be careful. If there was one thing I knew about teenagers, it was that they looked for potential gossip topics more than anything else. I knew we'd probably start to be the subject of silly rumors if I wasn't careful. Unfortunately, going to the art room first thing every morning didn't count as being careful. The students tried to hide it, but the potential budding relationship between Mr. Lacy, the math teacher, and Mr. Larson, the art teacher, quickly became a point of discussion. And not just among the students. I could tell our coworkers were curious too. I tried to be coy about it, tell them we were just friends, but I probably wasn't super convincing. Well, I didn't really care about the rumors. People were free to think what they wanted. To my surprise, though, it seemed to be a little different for Adam. "You know, the kids all think we're dating," he told me one evening over the phone. He was on speaker as I moved around the kitchen. I was making dinner, and I nearly dropped the plate in my hand when he brought that up without any warning. "Oh, really?" I cleared my throat. "That's definitely interesting." Adam laughed. "Come on, don't act like you didn't know that." As usual, he saw through me. "Well, they're teenagers. They're always thinking about stuff like that," I said. "What do you think about that?" he asked, his tone curious. I hesitated for a moment. I wasn't sure what exactly he was asking me. "Well, they're not exactly wrong," I finally answered. "We're going on dates, aren't we?" "Yeah, but I mean, they think we're a proper couple." I bit the inside of my mouth. How was I supposed to answer his question without making it obvious how much I actually wanted us to be a couple? "Well, if you're asking how I feel, I don't mind." I paused for a second before asking, "Do you?" There was quiet from Adam's end for a second. Then he answered, "I wouldn't be going on dates with you at all if I cared about something like that." I smiled to myself. There was a tacit agreement between the both of us to take things a little slow. I was very attracted to Adam, and I could tell that he liked me too, but we wanted to get a little closer before we decided to start a proper relationship. Courtship? Whatever you want to call it. Well, that's what it felt like. But sometimes I couldn't help but wonder if he was still trying to keep a bit of distance between us. I sorely hoped that wasn't the case. That conversation seemed to have broken some more of that ice, though. The next time he and I saw each other, I was on my way home from the store at night. I noticed a car slowing down beside me as I walked down the sidewalk. I felt a moment of confusion. That is, until I recognized the car. I was smiling even before Adam lowered his window to greet me. "Where are you headed?" he asked me, leaning his arm against the door and poking his head out of the window. "Home," I answered, raising the plastic bag in my hand. "I just stepped out to buy something. Where are you going?" "I was just taking a drive to clear my head, actually." "Seems like that was a great idea." He pointed his thumb toward the empty passenger seat. "Hop in. I can drop you off." With no reason or desire to refuse his offer, I entered the car. The car trip was short and comfortably silent. By the time we got to my apartment building, I had all but dozed off. Adam had to gently shake me awake. I thanked him and got out of the car, about to head inside, but something gave me pause. Hey, I'm about to make dinner, I said. I have enough for 2 people. Adam raised a brow. You want to make me dinner? I laughed. Well, if you want to put it like that, then yes, I do. It's pretty late though, so maybe not. Hey, I don't mind. It's just for dinner, right? Already, he had switched the engine off and stepped out of the car. If it's an hour or 2, then that's not that bad. Yeah, it shouldn't take that long, I said. Side by side, we walked into the building. Predictably, Adam did not stay just for dinner. The next morning, I woke up to the feeling of a foreign weight on my bed. Confused, I rolled over and opened my eyes, only to meet Adam's bare back. He was perched on the edge of my bed, facing away from me. There was a moment of confusion, then I remembered I'd made Adam dinner the previous evening, and then we had gotten, distracted. By each other. Just the memory of it made me smile like an idiot. It had been our first time together, and it had been better than anything I could have imagined. I was about to speak to him when I noticed something was wrong. Adam was hunched over, elbows resting on his knees. I couldn't see his expression, but it was obviously he was just staring straight ahead, quietly. He seemed to be deep in thought. What was he thinking about? Adam? I finally called out to him. He tensed as if startled by the sound of my voice. Oh, hey, did you sleep well? He asked. His voice was quiet, and he wasn't looking back at me. Well, he did say he wasn't a morning person, but this was out of character even for him. Yeah, I guess so. Hey, are you okay? I sat up and shifted closer, resting my head on his shoulder and trying to get a look at his face. Yeah, I'm just tired, he sighed. And he looked tired, down to his smile. You can sleep for a little longer then. I wrapped my arms around his middle from behind. I'll make us breakfast if you're hungry. I heard Adam suck in a slow breath, then he gently shook my arms off him and got to his feet. Actually, I think I'll just head off, yeah? He tried another smile as he found and slipped on his clothes. Last night was great. You're a really good cook. I remained in bed staring at him. I was sure the confusion was visible on my face. Why was he leaving so suddenly? It felt like something was wrong, but I couldn't quite put my finger on what it was. Once he was dressed, he walked back over to the bed and gently ruffled my hair. I welcomed the affection, of course, but something still felt off as he left the room. I didn't hear from him at all over the weekend after that. I texted him a few times and got no response, and when I tried to call him, he didn't answer. My concern soon morphed into cold, hard worry. Had I somehow messed things up? Things were only stranger when I went to see him the next school day. He smiled at me and we made conversation like we always do, but something was off. For some reason, it felt like he was waiting for me to leave. He had even come earlier than he usually did, so by the time I arrived, there wasn't much left that I could have helped him with. In this way, he began to put more and more distance between us. It was maddening. At multiple points, I wanted to grab him by the shoulders and ask him to his face if I had done something wrong. After a couple of days of this, I couldn't take it anymore. Since he wasn't answering my phone calls or texts, I decided I'd just have to see him in person. I felt a little bad, showing up at his place unannounced, but all I wanted was an explanation for his sudden behavior. Once I reached his place, I knocked on the door. It took so long for it to open that I might have thought he wasn't home at all if I didn't hear him moving around inside. After nearly 10 minutes, he cracked open the door. When he saw me, his eyes widened slightly. Roman, what's up? I stared at him. It was Saturday afternoon, and he was home and not expecting anybody, so I hadn't been expecting him to look super well put together, but it looked like he had not showered at all the last time I saw him on Friday. In fact, he was still wearing the last outfit I had seen him in. Stubble peppered his jaw, and those faint dark circles were much more noticeable. I frowned. Well, you aren't answering my texts or anything, so I should probably be asking you that question. Adam smiled wryly, looking down. Right, yeah, I didn't think you'd actually come here to see me. Oh, so you know you're doing it. I stared at him in hurt disbelief. Look, if I accidentally did something to make you upset, I'd rather you just told me to my face instead of avoiding me. We're too old for stuff like this. Adam pursed his lips and heaved a sigh. He was still staring at my shoes as if they were the most interesting thing in the world. You didn't do anything wrong, he said, his voice low. Then what is it? I demanded. Finally, Adam opened the door fully, gesturing for me to enter. I can explain inside, he said quietly. It's a little messy, though. At that point, I was so upset I almost wanted to just walk away, but since he was offering me an explanation, I decided I might as well hear him out. I walked past him into his home, and was immediately surprised by how much of a mess it was. Just walking past the kitchen, I could see dishes piled up in the sink and on the table. Dirty laundry was strewn about on the floor. I had been to his place a few times already at that point, but it had never looked this bad before. Adam walked over to the sofa, using his foot to push aside a small pile of pants before he sank into the couch, scratching the side of his face. I stood in front of him. Now I was even more worried. "Roman, I'm sorry you have to see me like this, man." He sighed and covered his eyes. "The truth is, I've been a mess these days." Gingerly, I sat beside him. "Why? Adam, what's going on?" Adam stared ahead as if considering what he was about to say. Again, my gaze was drawn to his forearms, and I noticed he had small shallow wounds on his skin, alongside the scars I had seen before. Now it was obvious what they were. They weren't scratches from a cat. They were scratches from Adam's own nails. "You know I really like you," he suddenly said, catching me off guard. "I always have, and I've always wanted to get closer to you, but I was kind of scared to do so. I mean, you're such a great guy. You have all your crap together. I didn't want you bothering with me at all. But then you asked me out that day, and I probably should have said no, but I got so excited, and then I got greedy. I kept hanging out with you, and it was great, but I don't think I can any longer." He covered his face and sighed. I shifted even closer, setting a hand on his shoulder. "Why not?" My voice was gentle now, laced with worry. "Because I don't want you to have to deal with me." When he peeked up at me again, his eyes were filled with tears. "Look, Roman, all that stuff at school is just pretend. I'm a mess. I've been depressed for most of my life now, for no good reason. I've seen doctors, I've been on meds, and nothing works. I'm just like this, and I don't know what to do. The only reason I'm still around is because I don't want to make people sad by doing something drastic. So I'm still alive, but I'm not really living for myself at this point. Getting up in the morning is so hard, Roman. Every time the sun comes up, I wish I could send it right back down. I try to be nice to people, but I don't want anyone else to have to deal with me and all my issues, especially not you, but it's too late for that. I guess because I ended up hurting you anyway." He sniffed and leaned back into the couch. "I'm sorry." I stared at him. Suddenly, lots of things made sense. The distance he put between himself and other people, the way he would sometimes get quiet and tired out of nowhere. It was depression. I would have never imagined someone like Adam would be suffering from something like that, but then again, depression doesn't exactly discriminate, does it? I was still hurt by Adam avoiding me, but now I understood why. And despite being hurt, I still cared about Adam. I leaned in closer and pulled him into a hug. Adam hesitated before relaxing in my hold. He rested his chin against my shoulder. "Adam, it's okay," I said gently. "No, it's not. I feel so guilty just spending time with you." Loosely, his arms moved around my back. "All I can think is how much you deserve better than someone like me." I hugged him tighter. "Adam, please don't say things like that. I want to be with you. I enjoy it a lot. You're sweet and kind and funny. Most of that stuff is just pretend, though. I'm forcing it. This is how I really am most of the time. I promise you don't want to deal with that." "Please don't talk about yourself like something to deal with." I pulled away from him, looking him in the face. He was still crying, and he still looked so tired. "I don't know how much pain you're in, Adam, and I definitely can't give you the type of help you need, but I can be here for you whenever you need me. It's no bother to me at all, because I want to be around you." He stared at me, his expression doubtful. "I promise." I used my thumbs to wipe at his tears. "Okay?" Adam smiled weakly. "If you say so. You're seriously too nice for your own good. If it's making you feel better, it's doing me plenty of good." Adam couldn't help but laugh at that. I didn't know how well I could support Adam, but I was willing to try my best for him, to the utmost best of my abilities. Months go by. Following that day, things started to change as we officially became a couple. Notably, Adam stopped trying to pretend around me. I would notice his mood dim unexpectedly for seemingly no reason, and even though I hated seeing him that way, I was also happy he wasn't expending all that mental energy trying to put on a brave face for me. I spent as much time with him as I could, but I also made sure to give him his space when it looked like he really needed it. Apparently, his last experience with therapy hadn't been very great, but I encouraged him to give it one more shot. Together, we found him a skilled therapist to treat him, and he booked a session. I spoke to him after the first one. "How was it?" I asked him. We were seated together in a small, quiet cafe. "Well, it's too early to say," he confessed, "but she might be a better match than the last guy." I smiled relief. "That's great to hear. Seriously, I'm so happy." Adam smiled back a little guiltily. "I'm sorry you have to deal with all this, Roman." I shook my head, reaching out across the table to take his hand. "You don't have anything to apologize for. I told you I want to support you because I care about you. You're worth caring about." Adam glanced down at our linked hands, gently lacing his fingers in mine. I knew my words would be hard for him to understand. Such was the nature of what he was going through, but that was why I wanted to stay by his side, until he was able to fully believe that he was worth caring for, however long it took. Conclusion. With the help of his therapist, Adam was able to cope with his depression more and more. Of course, he still had his bad days. Progress isn't linear, as they say, but I was always there to give him support when he needed it. The end. How would you help a loved one cope with mental illness? Thanks for watching. Consider subscribing to become part of our Rainbow Force. And stay wholesome.